Joining us, ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee, Democratic Congressman from Washington, Adam Smith. Congressman, thank you very much for being with us. First, your reaction to the news that the Ayatollah is dead.
Well, it's certainly a positive thing. I agree with the assessments that he was a horrible, horrible person leading his country, causing death and destruction of his own people, but then also in Syria, in Lebanon, in Yemen, and elsewhere. But as your guests correctly point out, it does not mean regime change in Iran. The IRGC, the military wing of the Islamic Republic, is the powerful wing that has managed to maintain control, not necessarily the Ayatollah. So if we're thinking that this is going to lead to some dramatic change in Iran's government and their policies, I don't think that's going to happen. That's going to have to play out in the days and weeks ahead.
The American public has not been given much by this administration, by Donald Trump. Again, no address to the nation tonight after these strikes, just a post overnight in the middle of the night to his own personal Truth Social page. Have you, as a lawmaker, a member of the House Armed Services Committee, have you gotten a briefing from this White House?
No, and we've been asking one for quite some time, but certainly since the strikes happened, and I was in contact with my staff as I was waiting to come on here, as far as we know, the Department of Defense hasn't spoken to a single solitary member of Congress since this attack happened. And look, there's two big things to realize about what Trump has done here. And number one is the consolidation of power in the executive branch and the undermining of our representative democracy. Never before in the history of this country has a president started a war of this size without making any effort to convince Congress or the American people of the wisdom of doing so. He has not made his case, and he's basically said, I'm the president, I'm doing this because I want to, and I don't have to convince the American people or Congress. That is a consolidation of executive power that certainly threatens our representative democracy. Now, maybe you say, well, we need a strong leader making tough, fast decisions. You know, Iran is a horrible government. This is just the way we have to do things. But if you say that, understand that you are pushing an authoritarian version of our government that is not what we should be doing. So that's number one. And then,
okay, go ahead.
Sorry.
No,
please.
I want to hear your second point.
Yeah, second point is on the actual operation. What's going to happen here? What are we trying to accomplish? It sounds like what we're trying to accomplish is regime change. It is unlikely to happen with just an air campaign. You will need some boots on the ground or people on the ground who are willing to fight back against this regime and replace it. Now, President Trump's assumption is that's going to be the Iranian people. But again, as your prior guest pointed out, the Iranian people don't have the guns and they don't have the military. The only hope would be if some number of the IRGC or that militia decides to turn on the current leadership or the leadership that will follow the Ayatollah, and there's no evidence of that. So we're likely having kicked off a big war in the Middle East, and we won't be able to accomplish the objective.
The Democrats are demanding a war powers vote on this. If that vote does come to the floor, and that's still an if, where do you stand on it?
Yeah, well, first of all, just to be clear, the War Powers Resolution is a vote to require congressional approval before the war can now continue. Previously would start, but now that it's started, that it can't continue without congressional approval. So I'll vote for that War Powers Resolution that demands that vote, and I will vote against continuing the war for the reasons that I stated. You know, I don't think it is the smart approach. And look, President Trump ran for president saying that regime change operations weren't smart, that he was going to move away from these types of forever wars. We rely too much on our military to fix every problem in the world. And the last 25 years have shown us that they just can't automatically fix all of those problems, and relying on them is costly and often disastrous.
What have you heard about the reports of a girls' school hit by one of our bombs, potentially 80 or more dead?
Yeah, just that. I mean, and that's another aspect of this, of course. We are killing average Iranians. Inevitably, when you drop a bunch of bombs on a country, you're going to kill innocent civilians. And that certainly is happening. Now, that's nowhere near the probably 10, 20,000 civilians that the Iranian leadership killed just a few weeks ago. But yes, that's going to be part of what happens, and it runs the risk of turning some of the Iranian people against us and uniting them behind the regime that is now under attack from a foreign power. Look, none of this is to say that Iran isn't a major problem in the Middle East. They are. But this notion that Trump has that there is no problem in the world, that the sheer force of his personality and his willingness to punch people in the face can't fix is problematic. And I think that's going to play out in this particular war that he has started.
Donald Trump said last night that there could be Americans who die in this. Do you know who he might be talking about? Will it be Americans in fighter jets? Is it American boots on the ground? Is it Americans at bases in the region?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like boots on the ground. And by the way, let me recommend to everybody a comment that Jason Crow, a colleague of mine on the Armed Services Committee, made, that for the president to have such a casual, hey, it's a war, people die, from a guy who, had how many ever deferments from serving. He isn't serving, his friends aren't serving, his friends' kids aren't serving. So he should be a little less cavalier about the fact, hey, I started this, sure, some Americans are going to die. I think he needs to take that a lot more seriously than he does, but it sounds like what he meant. He does not plan to send American troops into Iran. The risk to service members is the somewhere between 40 and 50,000 service members that we have stationed throughout the Middle East that Iran has already launched attacks against. And then also Iran has asymmetric options. They could launch terrorist attacks against American targets, frankly, anywhere in the world. Both of those are distinct risks. And I think those are the American lives that are most in danger as a result of the start of this war.
Congressman Adam Smith, always good to have you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Katy.
And Iran says its leader is dead. What is going to happen now? We're back with MS Now special breaking news coverage.